The space station horizon's edge floated quietly in the darkness between stars. It was nothing special to look at, just metal and glass spinning slowly to create gravity for the people inside. But this small station was humanity's ear to the galaxy, listening to every signal that traveled through space. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair, watching screens full of numbers and strange symbols. He had been doing this job for 3 years now, and most days were boring. Space was mostly empty, and the signals they caught were usually just star noise or old radio waves from distant planets. Today felt different. The coffee in Jake's cup had gone cold hours ago, but he did not notice. Something was coming through the speakers that made his skin crawl. It was not the usual random static they normally heard. This was organized, purposeful, and it sounded angry. Danny Cole, the young communications officer, looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Commander, you need to hear this. The computer thinks it's a language, but not one we know." Jake walked over to Danny's workstation. The younger man's hands were shaking slightly as he adjusted the controls. They had been trained to recognize alien signals, but this was the first real one they had ever found. "Can you clean it up?" Jake asked. Danny nodded and began working. The static slowly faded away, leaving behind a clear transmission. The voice, speaking, was definitely not human. It was too deep, with strange clicks and whistles mixed in with sounds that might have been words. "Get Dr. Rodriguez up here right now," Jake ordered. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was the station's expert on alien languages. She had spent years studying the few alien signals Earth had intercepted before, trying to understand how other species might communicate. Most people thought her work was useless, but Jake was grateful for it now. Elena arrived within minutes, still wearing her sleeping clothes. Her gray hair was messy, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She had been waiting her whole career for a moment like this. "Play it again," she said, settling into a chair next to Danny. As the alien voice filled the room again, Elena closed her eyes and listened. She took notes on a tablet, writing down symbols that looked like no alphabet Jake had ever seen. "It's definitely a language," she said after the third playback, "and whoever is speaking is upset about something. Very upset." Jake felt his stomach drop. The first real contact with aliens, and they sounded angry. "Can you translate it?" Elena shook her head. "Not yet, but I can tell this is not a friendly conversation. The tone, the speed, the way they repeat certain phrases. This sounds like a military report." Danny had been working on his own analysis. "Commander, I've been checking the signal strength and direction. This is not coming from nearby. Whoever sent this is very far away, and they used a lot of power to send it." "How far?" Jake asked. "At least 50 light years, maybe more." Jake sat down heavily. 50 light years meant this message had been traveling through space for 50 years before reaching them. Whatever the aliens were angry about had happened decades ago. But Elena was frowning at her notes. "Wait," she said. "Danny, check the signal again. Look at the transmission method." Danny ran his scans again, and his face went pale. "That's impossible. Commander, this signal is too new. The technology they use to send it is more advanced than anything we have. It should not have taken 50 years to get here." "What are you saying?" Jake asked. "I'm saying this message is only a few days old at most. Whoever sent it has faster-than-light communication." The room went quiet. Earth's scientists had been trying to figure out faster-than-light communication for decades. If aliens already had it, they were much more advanced than humans had hoped. Elena continued working on the translation, using the station's computer to help analyze the language patterns. After 2 hours, she had made progress. "I think I understand some of it," she said. "They keep using the same word over and over. Based on the context, I think it means humans or Earth people." Jake's blood ran cold. "They're talking about us?" "Yes, and there's another word they use frequently. I think it means defeat or loss." Danny looked confused. "But we haven't fought any aliens. How could they have been defeated by us?" Elena continued translating, her face growing more worried with each passing minute. "There's more. They mention ships, weapons, and something that might be capture, and they use numbers. Large numbers. What kind of numbers? Jake asked. Fleet sizes, I think. And they seem to be reporting to someone in authority. This isn't just a conversation between friends, this is an official report. Jake began to understand what they had stumbled onto. This is a military transmission. Some alien force fought human ships and lost. But where? Danny asked. We would have heard about a space battle. Elena found more pieces of the puzzle. They mention a location. It's hard to translate, but I think they're talking about the outer colonies, the mining stations and research outposts we built in the last few years. Jake remembered the reports from the outer colonies. There had been some unusual incidents recently. Ships going missing, strange sensor readings, equipment failures that could not be explained. The Colonial Defense Force had investigated, but they had found nothing conclusive. Now it made sense. The aliens had been testing human defenses, and apparently, they had been defeated. Elena gasped. Commander, I found something important. Near the end of the message, they talk about sharing information. They're sending this report to their homeworld, but also to other groups, other species. What are they sharing? Everything they learned about us. Our technology, our weapons, our ships. And they're making a recommendation. Jake did not want to ask, but he had to know. What kind of recommendation? Elena looked up from her tablet, with fear in her eyes. They're telling their leaders that humans are dangerous, more dangerous than they expected. They're recommending immediate action to stop us before we become a bigger threat. Danny's hands were shaking as he worked his controls. Commander, I'm picking up more signals. Dozens of them. All using the same communication method, all heading in different directions. Jake realized the terrible truth. The alien message they had intercepted was not just a report to one government. It was intelligence being shared across the galaxy. Every alien civilization would soon know about humanity's unexpected military capabilities, and they would all be deciding what to do about it. Danny, prepare a priority transmission to Earth Command. Maximum encryption. Elena, I need everything you've translated so far. As Jake began composing the most important message in human history, he understood that their quiet little listening post had just detected the beginning of something huge. One intercepted alien transmission was about to change everything for the human race. The galaxy now knew humans existed, and apparently they were afraid of what they had found. The message from the human listening post traveled across space faster than light, reaching every corner of the galaxy within days. On the massive space station called the Galactic Council Prime, representatives from 47 different alien species gathered in the Great Meeting Hall. The hall was enormous, built to hold beings of many different shapes and sizes. Some aliens breathed different gases, so the room was divided into sections with different atmospheres. Some needed water to survive, others needed intense heat. The engineering required to make this meeting possible was incredible. Ambassador Kethral of the Vorthan Empire stood 12 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. He had served on the council for over a century, and he had never seen the other ambassadors look so worried. In his upper hands, he held the translated human intelligence report that had been spreading across the galaxy. The Vorthans were known as great warriors. Their empire controlled over 200 star systems, and their military was feared throughout their region of space. But as Kethral read the report about human capabilities, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The report detailed how a small human fleet had defeated a much larger Xelian force. The Xelians were not weaklings. They had been expanding their territory for over 1,000 years, and their ships were equipped with advanced weapons and shields. Yet the humans had not just won the battle. They had won it easily. Mindsinger. Velthane of the Aquelan Collective floated in a tank of blue liquid, her tentacles moving in patterns that showed deep concern. The Aquelans were masters of information gathering. They had scouts positioned throughout the galaxy, watching and learning about every species. Velthane's scouts had been observing human expansion for years, and their reports were disturbing. Most species took centuries to develop space travel. It took even longer to build sustainable colonies on other worlds. The process was slow and careful, requiring generations of planning and resource management. Humans were different. They had gone from first spaceflight to interstellar colonies in less than a century. Their population was growing faster than any species the Aquelans had ever observed. They built cities on new worlds in years, not decades. They turned barren rocks into garden worlds with frightening efficiency. The most disturbing part was how humans used resources. Most civilized species had learned to live within limits, taking only what they needed and managing their consumption carefully. This was necessary for long-term survival in space, where resources were limited and mistakes could destroy entire colonies. Humans seemed to have no such limits. They consumed resources at incredible rates, but somehow they always found more. They turned asteroids into raw materials, mined gas giants for fuel, and even harvested energy directly from stars. Their appetite for growth and expansion seemed endless. High Counselor Zix Mordian of the Ethereal Conclave was the oldest being in the room. His species had been exploring space for over 10,000 years, longer than any other civilization in the galaxy. The Ethereals had seen the rise and fall of hundreds of species, and they understood patterns that younger civilizations missed. Zix Mordian's voice was like wind through crystal caves as he spoke to the assembled council. Fellow representatives, I have witnessed this pattern before. 3 times in our history we have encountered species that exhibited the same characteristics we now observe in humans. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew the stories of the 3 extinct species, though few knew the complete truth about what had happened to them. The Devourers appeared 7,000 years ago, Zix Mordian continued. They expanded rapidly, consumed resources without limit, and developed technology at an unprecedented rate. Within 5 centuries, they controlled 1/4 of the galaxy. The Swarm came next 4,000 years ago. They were different in form but similar in behavior. Rapid expansion, aggressive resource consumption, and technological advancement that threatened the balance of power. The 3rd species, the Builders, emerged 2,000 years ago. They were perhaps the most dangerous of all because they seemed peaceful. They built massive structures, terraformed worlds on an industrial scale, and created technologies that revolutionized space travel. An ambassador from the crystalline hegemony, a being made of living mineral, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What happened to them? Zix Mordian's ancient eyes glowed with memory. They were contained. The Council of those times recognized the threat they posed to galactic stability. Each species was eliminated before they could spread their influence too far. The word eliminated hung in the air like a poison cloud. The modern Galactic Council preferred to think of itself as a peaceful organization, dedicated to cooperation and mutual benefit. But the older Council had been different. They had been willing to make hard choices to preserve the balance of power. Representative Qniz of the insectoid hives clicked his mandibles in agitation. Are you suggesting we follow the same path with the humans? I am suggesting we learn from history, Zix Mordian replied. The pattern is clear. Species that exhibit unlimited growth and rapid technological development inevitably become threats to all other civilizations. The humans have already demonstrated military capabilities that exceed their apparent technological level. They adapted and improved Xelian technology in a matter of days. Ambassador Keth Rao looked at the intelligence report again. The details were impossible to ignore. Human engineers had not just studied captured alien weapons, they had completely redesigned them, making them 30% more efficient. They had done this without years of research or careful testing. They had simply looked at the technology and immediately seen ways to make it better. This was not normal. Most species needed decades to understand alien technology, and even longer, to improve upon it. The fact that humans could do it so quickly suggested they thought about technology in a fundamentally different way. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Representative after representative spoke about the threat humans posed. Their rapid expansion, their resource consumption, their technological adaptability, and their apparent lack of limits all pointed to the same conclusion. The humans were dangerous. If they were allowed to continue expanding and developing, they would eventually dominate the galaxy. Every other species would be reduced to secondary status or worse. The vote was called at sunset on the council station. 47 species cast their votes on a single question. Should the Terran containment protocol be activated? The result was unanimous. Every single species voted yes. The protocol was simple in its brutality. A combined fleet would be assembled, drawing ships from every member civilization. The fleet would travel to the human home system and eliminate Earth before the humans could spread their influence further. The assembled armada would be the largest military force in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships representing the combined might of 47 civilizations. No single planet could stand against such overwhelming force. As the council session ended and the ambassadors returned to their ships to carry the news home, none of them knew that human long-range sensors had already detected their meeting. The intelligence network that had intercepted the original Xelian message was still listening, and they had heard everything. Admiral Patricia Knox, commander of Earth's defense forces, was already preparing humanity's response. And that response would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Patricia Knox stood at the head of the emergency meeting room deep beneath the Earth Defense Command Center. The room was packed with the most important people on Earth: military commanders, scientists, engineers, and political leaders, had all gathered to hear the most shocking news in human history. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the positions of alien fleets that were gathering from across known space. The numbers were staggering. Over 10,000 ships were preparing to attack Earth. General Robert Hayes, the head of Earth's ground forces, stared at the display with disbelief. "Admiral, are you telling us that 47 different alien species have decided to work together to destroy us?" Patricia nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. Our deep space monitoring network intercepted their communications. They call it the Terran Containment Protocol. They see humanity as a threat that must be eliminated." Dr. Marcus Webb, the leader of Earth's Alien Technology Research Division, stepped forward. He was a thin man with tired eyes, but his voice was excited. "Admiral, I need to show everyone what we've discovered. The aliens aren't just planning to attack us. They've been holding themselves back for thousands of years." Marcus activated his own holographic display. It showed technical diagrams of alien weapons and ships that human forces had captured over the past few years. "Look at these designs. The aliens have been deliberately using inefficient technology. Their weapons could be 3 times more powerful. Their ships could be twice as fast. Their shields could be 4 times stronger." The room erupted in confused voices. Patricia held up her hand for silence. "Explain, Doctor." Marcus pulled up more diagrams. "We've been studying captured alien technology for 3 years now. At first, we thought we were just better engineers than they were, but that's not the case. The aliens know how to build better technology. They choose not to." "Why would they do that?" asked Colonel Amy Foster, the commander of Earth's space fighter squadrons. "Control," Marcus replied. "By keeping everyone's technology at the same level, no single species can dominate the others. It's an artificial balance of power, but humans never got the memo. We've been improving their technology because we didn't know we weren't supposed to." Patricia took control of the meeting again. "The aliens see our improvements as a threat to their carefully maintained balance. They think we're going to upset their entire system of government." "Are we?" asked General Hayes. Patricia smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "Oh yes, we absolutely are." She activated another display that showed the true scope of Earth's preparations. For the past 3 years, while the aliens thought humans were just another primitive species, Earth's military had been preparing for exactly this situation. Captain Ryan Mitchell, the commander of Earth's newest prototype warship, stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the real human space fleet." The display changed to show Earth's solar system. What everyone saw made them gasp. The system was filled with human ships, hundreds of them. They were hidden behind planets, inside asteroid fields, and in the shadows of moons. "We have been building ships in secret for 3 years," Ryan explained. But these aren't ordinary ships. They're equipped with technology that the aliens have never seen before. Dr. Webb took over the explanation. We took their inefficient designs and made them work properly. Our ships are faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than anything in their fleets. But that's not the best part. The best part, Ryan continued, is that our ships can talk to each other instantly, no matter how far apart they are. We figured out quantum communication. When our fleet fights, it doesn't fight as individual ships, it fights as one giant organism. Patricia could see the understanding dawning on everyone's faces. The aliens are coming here expecting to find a few hundred primitive ships defending a helpless planet. Instead, they're going to find a military force that can coordinate perfectly across the entire solar system. General Hayes was studying the tactical displays. What about numbers? They still have 10,000 ships. Numbers don't mean much when you can't coordinate effectively, Colonel Foster replied. Their ships use traditional communication methods. There's a delay when they try to talk to each other across long distances. By the time they realize what's happening, we'll have already adapted to counter their tactics. Dr. Webb brought up one more display. But our biggest advantage isn't military, it's ideological. The aliens have been suppressing technological development across the galaxy for thousands of years. They've been holding back progress to maintain their own power. We're going to change that, Patricia announced. We're not just going to defend Earth, we're going to free the entire galaxy. The plan she outlined was audacious beyond anything anyone in the room had imagined. Earth would not simply fight off the alien invasion. Instead, they would use the attack as an opportunity to broadcast a message to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The message would contain three things. First, the technical specifications for all the improved alien technology that humans had developed. Any species that wanted to break free from the artificial limitations could build better ships and weapons immediately. Second, the message would contain proof of the Galactic Council's conspiracy. Recordings of their meetings, documents showing their plans, and evidence of the 3 previous species they had eliminated for becoming too advanced. Third, the message would contain the true history of galactic civilization. The aliens had not been maintaining peace. They had been maintaining control. For thousands of years, they had prevented progress to keep themselves in power. When this message reaches every world in the galaxy, Patricia explained, it will cause revolutions. Governments will fall. The balance of power that the aliens have maintained for millennia will collapse overnight. Ryan Mitchell was grinning. And while they're dealing with revolutions at home, they'll be trying to fight a war against ships that are technologically superior and perfectly coordinated. Colonel Foster raised her hand. What if some of the alien fleets decide to retreat? When they realize what they're facing? Patricia's smile was cold. Then they'll go home to find their governments have been overthrown by populations who just learned they've been lied to for thousands of years. The meeting continued for hours as they planned the details of humanity's response. Every aspect of the defense was designed not just to protect Earth, but to fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization. As the meeting ended, Patricia stood before the holographic display showing the approaching alien fleets. In a few weeks, the largest military force in galactic history would arrive at Earth, expecting to find a primitive planet defended by a small fleet of converted civilian ships. Instead, they would find humanity's true strength, the refusal to accept limitations imposed by others, and the willingness to share knowledge and freedom with anyone brave enough to reach for it. The aliens thought they were coming to destroy a threat to their power. They had no idea they were about to trigger the liberation of the entire galaxy. The moment Admiral Patricia Knox pressed the activation button, the most important message in galactic history began spreading across space. The quantum communication array sent the signal to every inhabited world simultaneously, reaching billions of alien beings at exactly the same time. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Command ship Liberty, Captain Ryan Mitchell watched as his tactical display lit up with incoming alien fleets. 10,000 ships were approaching Earth's solar system in a massive formation that stretched across millions of miles of space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, but something was wrong with their formation. Ships were breaking away from the main fleet, turning around and heading back toward their home worlds. Captain Mitchell smiled as he realized what was happening. The human message was working. On the Vorthon homeworld, riots had erupted in the capital city within minutes of receiving the human transmission. The population had learned that their government had been lying to them for centuries. The advanced technology they could have had, the progress they could have made, all of it had been deliberately held back by their own leaders. Ambassador Kethral, who had voted for the destruction of Earth just weeks ago, found himself trapped in his government building as angry crowds surrounded it. The Vorthon people were demanding answers about the 3 extinct species their government had helped eliminate. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Aquelan collective was fragmenting as individual minds rejected the collective's participation in genocide. Smaller civilizations were declaring independence from the Galactic Council and beginning to build the improved technologies that humans had shared freely. The alien fleet approaching Earth was falling apart before it even reached the battle zone. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now aboard the command ship after being transferred from the listening post, was monitoring alien communications. "Admiral, we're intercepting thousands of messages from the fleet. Many ship commanders are refusing to continue the attack. They're saying the war is unjust." Admiral Knox nodded. "How many ships are still coming?" "About 4,000. The others have turned back or are holding position, waiting to see what happens." 4,000 ships was still a massive force, but it was far less than the 10,000 they had originally faced. More importantly, the ships that were still coming were no longer working together as a unified fleet. They were individual groups, each making their own decisions about how to proceed. Captain Mitchell activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All human ships, this is Liberty Actual. The enemy is approaching Earth's orbital defense zone. Remember, we fight as one. Execute Battle Plan Omega." Across the solar system, 300 human ships began moving into position. They had been hidden behind planets and moons, invisible to the approaching alien fleet. Now they revealed themselves, and the aliens got their first look at what they were really facing. The human ships were unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Their formation constantly shifted and adapted, responding to threats before the aliens could even recognize them. The first exchange of weapons fire lasted only minutes. Human ships fired weapons that were 50% more powerful than anything in the alien arsenal. Their shields absorbed incoming fire that should have destroyed them. Their speed and maneuverability made them nearly impossible to target effectively. But the real shock came when the aliens tried to coordinate their response. Their communication systems, which had served them well for thousands of years, suddenly seemed primitive and slow. By the time alien commanders could issue orders and receive confirmations, the human fleet had already moved to new positions and begun new attacks. Commander Velthane of the Aquelan forces was the first to understand what was happening. Her fleet was being destroyed not by superior numbers but by superior coordination. The humans were fighting as a single entity while her forces were fighting as thousands of separate ships. She sent a desperate message to the other alien commanders. "Retreat immediately. We cannot win this battle. The humans have capabilities we never anticipated." But it was too late for an organized retreat. The human fleet had anticipated this moment and positioned themselves to prevent escape. Captain Mitchell's ships surrounded the alien forces, trapping them in Earth's solar system. The battle continued for 18 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships destroyed or disabled alien vessels with methodical precision. Every time the aliens tried a new tactic, the human fleet adapted immediately and countered it perfectly. By the end, less than 100 alien ships remained functional, and all of them had surrendered. Admiral Knox stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the wreckage of the once mighty alien fleet. But her attention was focused on the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The human message had done more than just weaken the attacking fleet. It had triggered the collapse of the entire galactic order that had existed for thousands of years. Dr. Webb reported from the science station. Admiral, we're receiving signals from over 200 worlds. They're all asking for technical assistance to build the improved technologies we shared. Most of them have overthrown their old governments. The Galactic Council? Knox asked. Dissolved as of 6 hours ago. The member species voted to disband the organization and create a new confederation based on free exchange of knowledge and technology. Elena looked up from her communication station with wonder in her eyes. Admiral, I'm getting messages from species we've never heard of before. Civilizations that were suppressed by the Council are revealing themselves now that they're free to develop their own technology. Captain Mitchell was studying the long-range sensors. Admiral, I'm detecting massive construction projects beginning throughout the galaxy. It looks like dozens of species are starting to build things they could never build before. Knox smiled as she realized the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. They had not just defended Earth from invasion, they had liberated an entire galaxy from artificial constraints that had held back progress for millennia. The galaxy was entering a new age of exploration and discovery. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now sharing knowledge and working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. And it had all started with one intercepted alien message. Jake Morrison, still at his post on the listening station Horizon's Edge, was monitoring the new communications networks that were spreading across the galaxy. Where once there had been rigid controlled channels of information, now there was free and open exchange between hundreds of civilizations. Danny, he said to his young colleague, I think we're going to need a bigger listening post. The call that had destroyed entire civilizations was not a weapon or a threat. It was the simple sharing of truth and knowledge. The alien governments had fallen not because of human military might, but because their own people had learned they deserved better than artificial limitations and controlled progress. Humanity had proven that the greatest victory comes not from superior firepower, but from the courage to share knowledge freely, and the refusal to accept that progress should be feared rather than celebrated.